Now, I am thrilled today to welcome a highly regarded American classical composer, Tina Davidson, who's also a woman, obviously a mother, and the author of Let Your Heart Be Broken, Life and Music from a Classical Composer. And she's going to be talking about the lessons from her extraordinary life and her belief that, I love this quote, we are, in the end, a measure of the love we leave behind. So Tina, thank you very, very much for being with us here today. So maybe we start with you introducing yourself, because I don't actually even know you personally. You found me, for which I'm thrilled. And yeah, a little bit about who you are, where you are, and what has brought you to wanting to share the message you will be sharing here today.
Well, first of all, I live in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I've been a classical composer for 45 years. So I compose out of the classical tradition. I write for orchestras, ensembles, string quartets, choirs, opera. And this year, I finally published my memoir, as you said, Let Your Heart Be Broken, which is not only about my little strange beginning life, but also about my musical process and my relationship to music. So I speak really personally about all of those things in my book.
Wonderful. So maybe we start, you mentioned your beginning in life before we get into the core of the matter. Maybe you want to set the scene, you share whatever you feel happy sharing.
Well, I was born in Sweden, and you can find out some of the more salacious. I was born in Stockholm, Sweden, and I lived in a foster home. And then I was adopted and brought back to America. And then actually I lived in Istanbul, Turkey for 3 years. I lived in Germany for a year, in Israel for a year. And then my family was in Santiago, Chile for a year and a half. So my parents, my mother and my stepfather, were professors. Well, I always say they were adventurers disguised as professors. So I had this very broad education, very worldwide education.
The global, yeah.
Yes, and I've always loved, I've always played the piano. And when I was in college, I was a very good pianist. I'd studied in conservatories. But at college, I was asked to also take a composition class, which I thought was pretty hokey. At that point, I was young and naive, but I thought all great music had already been written. And so I was a reluctant composer. But after 3 months, it's all I wanted to do. There was something about the anonymity of composing about my life without anybody really knowing about it, because music is wordless. And I think that turned out to be a very safe, protective place for me to grow and learn. And I've always composed out of an understanding of myself as a woman, as living in this era, and a mother, and a community activist in terms of getting music out into the community.
Gosh. So, I mean, music's really at the core of your being, right? It's something that you use to process things, to heal. Yeah. It must be beautiful to have that.
It is. Yes, it is really the fulcrum for which I speak into my music. And then, oddly enough, my music teaches me something about myself. So there's this wonderful sort of reciprocal relationship that I have. And about 10 years ago, I decided that I really wanted to articulate some of the things that I felt about music. So my book is short stories about my childhood, which is very interesting. There are lots of twists and turns in my life. And then the next chapter is a year of journals. So I'm in my late 30s and 40s. It's about the music I'm writing, but it's also about my processing my childhood and the music that I'm writing about that. So at one point, I am writing a cello quartet, and it's called Dark Child Sings. So it was about that sort of dark child in me,
yes,
that wanted more of a voice.
But how wonderful you could give it in this way. And I mean, I'm sadly not musical. I think I would have loved to be musical. I mean, I express my creativity and my anguish, etc., through writing, and my joy as well, through acting, through dancing, but not music at all. But for me, the concept of composing music is just, I mean, I'm in absolute awe. I wouldn't even know how to start. And sometimes when I listen to classical music, I mean, I am just literally gobsmacked at how somebody has thought to weave this at exactly that moment in this tempo at this, and it's an entire world. So I'm entirely in awe, and you have some extremely good, let's say, endorsements from some very serious establishments. So I mean, we're talking about,
I have a lot of recordings and yes, performances from major orchestras and ensembles. I think one of the things that my memoir attempts to do is to demystify the process a bit, to make it more human, to put words to it. And I've been really pleased. Like, people will write me, like, first of all, I can't put it down. It's like a thriller. I'm reading it at 4:00 in the morning and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, poor person. And then they'll say, thank you for articulating, I'm not musical. And it's sort of a way in. And I did really want, at this place in my life, having done it for 45 years, you know, having been a musician for over 60 years, I want to bring people into the process so they don't feel so put off or
daunted, indeed, right?
Daunted. And also, I think many times classical music is so elevated that we don't think of it as part of our life. And to me, the reason I love Beethoven is because he was a grumpy old man. And when you listen to the music with that thought and you go, oh yeah, he was very authentic.
I think you really hit it on the head, because, you know, you said demystify and the words human, and immediately my brain went, oh, for me, it was exactly that. For me, when I listen to something, it's the divine. It's like these people must be hearing noises. They must be in contact with some sort of, you know, superior vibrations where they hear these things.
Yeah, I'm really about demystifying that, because
so would you say that's your mission with the book?
Well, I have lots of missions.
Go on, share them, because that's exactly what this program is about.
Well, the title, I've got a little copy here.
Yes,
Let Your Heart Be Broken. It comes from a time when I was at a conference with Stephen Levine, who worked with the death and dying guru, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And this was during the AIDS epidemic, which was so, I think, terrifying for so many people, and to have loved ones dying or people that you knew, especially if you were in the arts. It was such a dark time.
Yes.
So I had been reading all his books, and I'd gone to this conference, and he's asked at the conference, what is the meaning of life? And he says, I really don't know. He pauses, looking to the side. He turns back, smiling. But I think the meaning of life is to let your heart be broken. The heart, the round sphere of your being, let your heart be broken. Allow, expect, look forward to the life that you have so carefully protected and cared for. Broken, cracked, rent in two, heartbreakingly, your heart breaks. And in the two halves rocking on the table is revealed rich earth, moist, dark soil, ready for a new life to begin.
Oh my, that is very beautiful. Living, right? Then it means, you know, if we say, well, what's the opposite of not letting our hearts be broken? So then it would be protecting them. It would be not engaging in life. It would
burying,
be back. It would be fear of having our heart broken.
Haunted by.
Yeah. And then you miss life, right? It's a bit like that Simon and Garfunkel song. You know, you can be an island, you know, but nobody's going to hurt you, but you're going to not live, right? You're going to pass next to actually living. So for you then, also let your heart be broken. Does that mean like embrace life to the full, be prepared to fall, be prepared to hurt?
I think, first of all, the truth is everyone has had their heart broken.
Yes.
At any point, as a child, going through school, you know, with your friends, with your boyfriends, with your, you know, your partners, your your children, your society, your political. Oh my goodness, talk about political in the United States. You know, liberals' hearts were just breaking. So there's no way around it. You don't want to go out and look for it because it's going to come to you. And it's about saying this is part of life. It's kind of a Buddhist concept that life has this element of suffering. And when you're okay with that, you look into it. And I think then you can start to pass through it.
Yes.
And then the gift at the end is out of this deep understanding of yourself and the issue at hand. You find that there are new tools to live life.
Right.
And you recreate yourself. And so, again, I'm very much someone who always wants to say to people, your creativity belongs to you. It is part of who you are. Trust it. Allow it. And if you're with friends who say, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, maybe you need new friends. That's so a good possibility.
And lots of our friends do hold us back from that sort of thing. We're well-intentioned, usually, you know, they don't want us to get hurt, or they don't want us to be disappointed or to lose confidence or whatever.
And we want to be careful with ourselves. You know, we're going to be careful, but there is being careful. And then there are times when there is a leap of faith where you feel this is the right thing. You don't actually see where the next step is, but you're going to throw yourself in that direction because you believe that it's there and you have been thoughtful.
Yes.
You're not climbing up to the top of an Empire State Building and saying, oh, let me just, maybe if I fall off, I'll be okay. No.
But it's also, in a way, isn't it? It's letting us be all of who we can be, because I think lots of people, it's a bit like they used to say we use 10% of the power of our computer. I dare say with how high-tech our computers are now, we probably use 1% of the potential of our computers. But it's the same thing in our life, isn't it? You know, we hold ourselves back through all sorts of different fears or societal obligations, or, as you say, you know, limiting beliefs from the past or whatever it may be. But I think it must be awfully sad to arrive at the end of our lives and think we could have been so much more. And we're not going to know if we don't dare try. It's a bit like a child who's too scared of falling. You know, if he never tries to take those first few steps and allows himself to fall and hurt and learn and pick himself up and go on having discovered what balance is, then he would never have moved. And imagine a life with a child who's just stuck on the floor without being able to move. Right. There is always an element of risk. And I was just publishing this book. I just published it in March. It's getting a lot of reviews. And what's very interesting is if you're listed on Amazon or on Goodreads, just anybody can leave a review. Oh, wow. Which is a great equalizing force. Yes. But it's pretty scary. I was going to say, it must be rather confrontational as well. It is, but you can't speak out and not accept that that's going to be part of the process. I can limit what I'm reading. Yes. I can protect myself. But you don't have to believe everything that's written either, right? Right. But if I believe in my work and if I believe in myself, I'm going to have to take those risks. Yes. And get it. And when you think about all the big people, you know, all the big writers or the big, you know, thinkers or revolutionaries, etc., by definition, they have attracted a lot of negative because it's something new as well. It's something people get jealous, people get resentful. It's shining the light on something. I mean, maybe flaws in your work. Hello, that happens. Yeah. And I mean, it's really putting yourself out there. But of course, in a way, you already do that with your compositions, don't you? In a way, not in a written word, but in a way, you are opening up your heart together with your love, your joy, your fears, your pain, you are putting all of that. But of course, only you really know. People will listen, they'll feel. That is true. And I have to say in my foreword, I say, I am a composer. I delight in the ebb and flow of energy, the gathering of melodies and rhythmic passages, and the shaping of them into a continuously moving sound. Writing, but then I talk about
the writing process as opposed to the composing process, and that both of them are an active placing and grounding. Writing, however, is more vulnerable, truer to life storytelling. Composing is in a world of its own, both emotion and energy. I camouflage myself, wrap myself in a language that has no direct translation. Writing reveals me naked.
Wow. Yeah. And that is very true, right? It's putting yourself out there. I'm in total awe as well. I've started, I don't know, writing, I don't know how many books, but I still haven't, made the final step. And 97% don't ever finish their book. But so, I mean, to get back to your book, and we're talking about Fabulous After 50, we're talking about a period where we maybe stop and digest a little bit or incubate a little bit of what's happened to us. We try to give it meaning, we try to give it purpose. And we also, it is very much what I do like about these years, is it's usually a time of giving back. What would we like to give to other people? How, in which way would we like, the elder, the grandmother in the tribe, etc. What would we like to give, the younger generations? What of what you share in your book would you like to give to younger generations in order to live a full and creative life?
Well, and certainly your 60s, it's fabulous after 50, but for me, the 60s have been a real time of looking at my creativity and noticing how it's changed. So I've always been very, very ambitious. And some people would say I'm competitive, but I don't feel the competition with others. I think ambition is a better word for it.
Or competitive with yourself, right? You want to always
I want
be
to
better.
do the best I can. Although, if one musical composition doesn't work and I go, I'll just say, okay, write the next one. Just keep on going. But for me in my 60s, which I've been very interested in, is that my creativity, instead of being very narrowly focused, seems to ooze in many directions. So it's less hard, it's less brittle. So I'm writing this book, I'm actually do a lot of pastels, I'm writing music, I'm teaching. So I'm just really interested in that.
It's broadening out, right? Instead of being so focused, it's broadening out.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly feel for younger people and for anyone, if you can face your pain, if you can think about going through it as opposed to around it.
Or against it, the amount of energy when we either keep things in boxes, right, because we don't want it to rule our life, so we bury it as deep as we can, but we're still dragging it behind us. And the energy which goes into that, and I love that this age, and as you say, well, I'm going very much direction 60, so I will be 56 at the next one. So I'm already wondering, should I go for sensational after 60, or do I keep it fabulous after 50? But we'll see about that one later. But I love what you're saying, and then who knows, then I might actually try the music branch in the broadening of my creativity. But indeed, I hear what you're saying, and it's the daring, right? It's the daring, discover different things and to open up to especially not just the cerebral. And I think these years are years where we do dare. Maybe we know a little bit more about who we are. Maybe we've learned a little bit more that we do survive, through divorces or bereavement, or
and our children are leaving. We're having, we're also seeing the different relationships with our children that we've had. And we're grieving some of the loss of the,
true.
You and I are one to, oh my goodness.
That resonates so much with me. That resonates so much with me. I mean, in a good way, it's good to see them all standing on their feet and doing their own thing, etc. But I was even commenting to my partner this morning saying, oh gosh, the eldest is off on a trip here and there, and I had no idea how fast it's gone, that period from when, we were living so intimately and brushing your teeth together and suddenly not having a clue even on which continent he is.
That's a huge change, and that is such a great role model for how we are evolving in our lives. We had different things when we were younger. I think that for me, being in my 50s, I felt that I was a little bit more on my feet, really more grounded. And when I was in my 60s, it was like, if I'm not doing what I absolutely want to be doing, I need to be doing it. There was a kind of urgency to that second or that third part of the life, which I think might be more about legacy,
Yes.
still being creative, but having more of a sense of legacy. And I think that's where the giving back is
Right.
so dominant, is that part of the legacy is making sure that we are leaving things
Yes.
in good
Whichever
order.
small way, but a tiny extra, a tiny plus. You know, some people leave huge legacies, but that we all have, that's our reason, I believe, for being here in whichever way it is. And I'm just so grateful for you for this book. And we'll mention again when we wrap up the name and where to get hold of it. Now, if I were to ask you, out of all that you have learned and out of all that you have poured into this book and this coming together of you, your pain, your past, your present, your future with your child as well, your music, what 3 tips would you have? So we're talking for a fabulous after 50, not the younger ones. What would you say we should, aim to do?
As I said before, clean up your act, face your pain, get those floors cleaned up, and find good support for that. You have good friends, you might have a therapist. I think it takes many different things to create a healthy life. It may be dancing, it may be yoga, fitness, good eating, taking walks, maybe having a furry friend. But those are all little pieces that create a more stable, productive end of your life, really being connected. Trust your creativity. I just say that. I had a student come in and he said, you know what? He's a college student and he's writing a piece. And he said, I get into my own head. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, well, I don't trust myself. I said, oh, that's why you have me.
Right.
Because I will remind you to trust yourself. I will support you in that direction. And when you say you don't do it, I will, So again, learning to trust yourself. And it may be in small increments,
right,
that you start trusting your creativity. And I think it's very important that we, all of us, particularly women, speak out, articulate who you are in this place in life. Don't let other people, don't let the words of younger people be your articulations. Find your own language and speak often.
Yes.
so that I think that women after 50 feel that they might be dismissed or are invisible. I don't happen to feel that way, but I think that's because I'm very much speaking in my own voice when I need to and want to. And so I would say, yes, speak out of who you are.
Beautiful. Beautiful, Tina. Thank you so much. So let us remind the name of your book and where we can get hold of it.
Okay, it's called Let Your Heart Be Broken, Life and Music from a Classical Composer. It is actually hardbound. I don't have a copy here. The hardbound cover is different, which I love.
Yes, actually, I saw it.
Yes. This one is delicious too.
Well, my birthday's coming up in July, so I've already made myself a little mark here to ask one of my children to get me that.
Yes, and you can get it from Amazon.
Perfect.
Yes.
And so what can I say? Well, what's the next thing, just in very short?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I really want to follow this book through. I think that's another thing that's very important in your life, is not to say, oh, I wrote this. Well, okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
So, yes, so following it through, but I have some commissions and I have some essays that I want to write, and maybe another book. We'll see. I'm keeping the door open.
Well, I love your mindset. I love everything that you've shared here. This is everything that I want this program to be. You've more or less touched on all the things important to me, and I'm very grateful to you. I hope you will be a huge inspiration to the people around. I very much encourage everyone to get the book and to be inspired by everything that you do. Tina, thank you very, very much.
Totally my pleasure. Thank you.
Have a lovely weekend and good luck with all that you're doing, the composing, the book, the follow-up, the students that you're inspiring, and the rest of you. Speak to you again this time next week. Bye-bye.